believe that he was the murderer?
I can't say 100% definitive, but circumstantially,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
Circumstantially.
This is former HPD Detective Sheryl Sunia. We sat down to discuss the Honolulu Strangler cases and other topics related to crime in Honolulu.
All of the DNA evidence and all the cold cases that are being solved with, like I said, genetic genealogy, and also going back and testing evidence, because now, like, if we were to test it against him, who is the main suspect, you'd be able to see, well, I guess, depending on if there is existent DNA evidence from the evidence files, you'd be able to tell if it was him, or at least even, say it wasn't him at that point, right?
Right. Unfortunately, he was, he dumped bodies in water. Water is our worst enemy because it depletes any fluids that could be used for DNA. There's also medical procedures that affect DNA, and a lot of medical records aren't available, so there's no way to confirm that. So there were a lot of dynamics that were blockage for investigating it. Some of the items used to secure the females came from or were similar to his place of employment. And I believe it was Flying Tigers at that time.
Right.
And so there was a lot of circumstantial evidence.
Yeah.
But again, and I'm sure his family would like to clear his name.
Of course.
And so it's looking at it. And Dr. Chris Mahande, him and I go back probably 1989, no, I don't know, 20 years before my retirement, because he was actually a psychologist with LAPD and involved in hostage negotiations. So we've remained friends over all these years. And I did talk to them about it. Again, when you're investigating these cold cases, it's, to look at the physical evidence, we didn't have all the means available at that time.
Of course.
We have, and it's really important now going forward that we have items secured.
Well, being a cop, also just being someone who's lived here, have you felt it's gotten more violent?
Oh, I think with drugs, I think COVID has changed a lot of people. I think people are recovering from having to be bunkered down. We saw a large amount of deaths. Those 2 years, there's a lot of depression, there's a lot of really unrestful, but I think that in general, the unemployment rate is high, drugs play a factor, not having an extended family play a factor, and so I think crime is everywhere.
Right.
I think there is really a need for some type of, something has to give. I mean, we've seen a lot of negative police articles.
Right.
People are very upset. So there has to be a fixing of everything. To me, part of policing, and most of it is social work, because you're dealing with people who have issues. You got to realize our child abuse numbers went up during COVID because children were home from school. Our domestic violence rates went up because of COVID. All kinds of things went up where people didn't have money. You were having a lot of carjackings, burglaries, thefts. Criminals don't stay home just because they're told, you're supposed to stay home.
Of course.
So a lot of things have happened with that, a lot of negative publicity with law enforcement. And I think that as times are changing, especially after COVID, we really need to look at training and in bringing back the confidence of the police and the police being involved in society, not just on a negative basis.
Right.
A lot of outreach, community policing. There just needs to be a reconnect with everything. And then you have corruption in some departments and people stepping down. Unfortunately, what's happened to the Honolulu Police Department is very hard for me because I bleed blue.
Right.
But there's so much mistrust. And so you really have to work in their search for a new chief, and hopefully they get the person in there who can do it.